Welcome back, George.
It's my pleasure.
Do you think what is going on in the Arab world right now reminds you of 1989 when you were very active in helping those countries move to freedom?
It is very similar. It's a historic event, at least equal in importance to what happened then. And it really is a spontaneous desire of people living in closed societies to shake off the dictatorship and corrupt regimes and to move towards democracy. The big difference between 1989 and now is that there it was the Soviet dictatorship that was collapsing. Here it's our allies that are changing, and now we have to actually regain the confidence and alliance of the people in these countries.
In Eastern Europe, the people were for us because we had opposed those regimes.
That's right.
Here, we have supported these regimes, so the people look at us at least with some suspicion.
Yeah, but I must say that in this respect, President Obama did an outstanding job. It's not sufficiently appreciated. Really, what a big difference it was that he is our president at this time. Just imagine if Bush and Cheney would have been in charge. I don't think you would have had a peaceful revolution in Egypt.
Even though they were for democracy and the Bush talked about the freedom agenda?
Yes, it was, but in effect they were allies of these regimes, and President Obama sees it in terms of people asserting their right to be more in charge of the government.
You say revolutions usually start with enthusiasm but end in tears.
That's right.
So, and there are many cases where these things start off well and then the military reasserts control, or there's some kind of total dysfunction.
Yeah.
What are the lessons you've learned about how to make sure that Egypt goes right rather than goes wrong?
Well, what I learned in 1989-91, when I was very involved there, is that the transition from a closed society to an open society is not an easy one, because it's a step up, because there's a lot more involved in democracy than just overthrowing a dictator. You have to build institutions. That takes time and actually effort. And these countries will need a lot of support for the revolution actually to succeed.
In Egypt, what people look at is the Muslim Brotherhood, a group that, whether or not it's peaceful or not, has pretty extreme views, and views that are often not compatible with an open society, with a democratic society.
This is what I find very heartening, because I also accepted this view that it's either Mubarak or the Muslim Brotherhood or Al-Qaeda. It turns out that there is, even in Egypt, a sufficiently engaged middle class, particularly young people, who actually want to be democratic and are not beholden to an Islamic political movement. So the reality actually turns out to be much more promising than I expected.
When you look around at the regimes, the other regimes, there seem to be protests and discontent everywhere. The one that is most interesting is Iran.
Of course, and I'm convinced that the regime will not survive. It was already highly vulnerable because the revolution got further and further extreme. Actually the mullahs, the Islamic element, was already disenfranchised. And it was just the Revolutionary Guard, and then even within the Revolutionary Guard, an increasingly narrow group of people who are maintaining themselves in power through real oppression and despotism, killing people through judicial processes, and the large majority of people resent them, try to move up, but because they were oppressed, this movement was repressed.
Could we do something to further these trends in Iran?
I think Obama did actually there also a very good job by refusing to get involved and to be instigating regime change. This attempt to impose a regime change from the outside is counterproductive, because then the regime can accuse its opponents as being in the pay of a foreign power. Right? Here, Obama scrupulously avoided it. He was criticized for it, that he wasn't
pro-democracy.
Pushing it. Now, I think now he's beginning to push, and rightly so. And as I said, the situation there could get very, very ugly. I think that the opposition leaders could easily be killed through a false judicial process, because the regime is fighting for its survival, because they know that they have committed such crimes that it's either them or the people. So they will put up a lot more resistance. But I don't think that they'll be able to succeed, because this is something that people behave very differently than in normal times. They actually are willing to sacrifice their lives for a common cause. So it's, and the impossible, what seems to be impossible, not only becomes possible, but it actually happens. So I would like to bet that the Iranian regime will not be there in a year's time.
Wow. If the Iranian regime collapses, this will be a real revolution in the Middle East. I mean, you are imagining a period of great instability.
Yes. Well, look, in 89-91, the Soviet Union collapsed. It was a major change in geopolitics. The least you can expect is for Iran to collapse in this one, for it to be equally significant. In other words, this game of geopolitics is not totally fixed, because what goes on inside states has a lot of influence on how those states behave. So Iran, I think, will almost inevitably change its character, and that will change the landscape.
Where do you think the U.S. economy is right now? Is the budget that President Obama submitted the right way forward? Are the Republican critiques of it correct? Where do you stand?
Well, President Obama has lost control of the agenda. The agenda is now in the hands of the Republican Party, and they are going to pursue a very strong effort to cut services by refusing to have any tax increases, by forcing the extension of the Obama tax cuts also for the top 1 or 2%. You have built in a budget deficit. Therefore, you've got to cut services, and they'll oppose any kind of additional new taxes. I think this agenda will be successful, but it will be pursued, I think, to an extent where it's more directed at cutting services and achieving the ideological purposes of the Republicans, rather than to get the economy going. So I think this will have a negative effect on the economy.
Do you think overall Obama has handled the economy well?
No. No, I've been critical of it, and I think that he made one major error. He had to bail out the banking system, because without it, we would be in a depression. But the way he did it was the wrong way, because he should have injected capital where it was missing. There was a hole in the equity, and he should have provided equity. And instead of nationalizing the liabilities of the banks, but not nationalizing the banks.
George, I want you to look at a piece of video we have here.
The question is, do we have a shadow government? And if we do, who are those intelligent minority that is guiding us through? And where are they guiding us to? If you skip past all of the puppets and the strings, if you stop looking at the puppets themselves, you have to see who's behind the puppets. Who is choosing the puppets and the players? Who's the puppet master? George Soros.
So, George, Glenn Beck has been on this kick that you are actually the mastermind who is trying to bring down the American government. How do you react when you see this kind of thing?
Well, I would be amused if people saw the joke in it, because what he is doing, he is projecting what Fox, what Rupert Murdoch is doing, because he has a media empire that is telling the people some falsehoods and leading the government in the wrong direction. But, you know, by accusing me of doing that, it kind of makes it rather hard to see that it's really he is working for the man who's doing it, which is Fox News.
But it's very personal. I mean, he talks about you as a 14-year-old boy, and he accuses you of essentially helping to round Jews up. I mean, you're Jewish yourself. You lost many, many people in the Holocaust. How did you feel when you heard that?
Well, look, Fox News makes a habit. It has imported the methods of George Orwell, you know, Newspeak, where you can tell the people falsehoods and deceive them. And you wouldn't believe that an open society and a democracy, these methods can succeed. But actually, they did succeed. They succeeded in Germany, where the Weimar Republic collapsed and you had a Nazi regime follow it. So this is a very, very dangerous way of deceiving people. And I would like people to be aware that they are being deceived. And I hope they wake up and they realize that they are being deceived.
What do you think of this broader movement of the Tea Party, of what's going on the right?
Look, I think the people in the Tea Party are very decent people, hardworking. They've been hit by a force that comes from somewhere which they can't fully understand, and they are being misled. And they are misled by people who are using it for their selfish purposes, namely to remove regulations and reduce taxation. So reduce taxation and regulation, and they are being used and deceived.
Do you think that there is some... I'm struck by the fact that when I first met you, you were always accused of being this ultra-capitalist. You were the speculator, you were the person who, you know, understood markets better than anyone. And now you're painted as this kind of left-wing iconic figure. It's been quite a journey.
Well, you just had the experience of speaking to the puppet master and the extreme left-wing manipulator, and you and the audience can make their own decisions.
And we will. George Soros, thank you very much.
My pleasure.